The federal government introduced a new program which took effect on September 2nd in order to help first-time buyers get into home ownership. I'm sure you've all heard how hard it is for first-time buyers to get into the market because house prices have risen so high, and it is hard for first-timers to get into the market. So watch to the end of my video and you'll hear my opinion on the whole first-time buyer dilemma. How this program works is the federal government will lend you money towards your down payment if you're a first-time buyer. 5% if you're buying a resale property, and 5 or 10% if you're buying a new construction property. The amount the government lends you will go on your house registered as a second mortgage. Now there are no monthly payments on that amount, but you will have to pay it back when you either sell your house or after 25 years if you're still in that house. You have to repay it after 25 years. The purpose of this program is to help first-time buyers by lowering their monthly mortgage payments. So the government helps by lending you that money, that 5 or 10%, which you therefore do not have to make any mortgage payments, monthly payments against that property. So if you're going to borrow $20,000 in this program, that $20,000 down payment in a secured equity mortgage will reduce your monthly payments by about $100. A few points about how this program works. The money that the government lends you towards your down payment, whether it's 5% or 10%, is registered on your house as a second mortgage. This is a shared equity mortgage. What that means is the government shares in the equity of your property, the house you bought. So if you buy a house for, say, $400,000 and you go to sell that house in 5 years and it's gone up to $500,000, you have to pay the government back the 5%. So you would pay the government back the 5% of the $500,000. It's a shared equity. So they will share in the growth of your property. Your property's gone up from $400,000 to $500,000. You owe them 5% of $500,000. But on the other side of that, if your property should happen to tank, if the market tanks and your house drops from $400,000 to $300,000 and you sell then, you owe them 5% of the $300,000. So they're taking a risk there too, and they're taking the benefit of your increase in equity as well. To be eligible for this program, your total qualifying income can be no more than $120,000 per year. So if you're a young couple and you're each making $60,000 a year, that's great. If you're a single person and you're making $120,000 a year, good for you. Types of properties that qualify for this program: single-family houses, townhouses, semi-detached properties, condominiums, and multi-unit properties up to 4 units. The property you buy must be owner-occupied. You must live in it. No investment properties allowed. The amount you borrow cannot be more than 4 times your yearly income. So if you make a combined income of $100,000, the most you can borrow for a mortgage is $400,000. That's just in place to keep people from getting in over their heads. Another requirement is your mortgage must have mortgage loan insurance. What that means is when you put less than 20% down on a house, you have to get mortgage insurance on your mortgage. This is to protect the lender, not to protect you. So you would get mortgage insurance from either CMHC or Genworth or one of the other mortgage loan insurance providers. So you put less than 20% down, you have to get insurance. It has to be an insured mortgage to qualify for this program. But if you have more than 20% down, you don't really need this program. You don't have to pay CMHC fees. You don't have to pay mortgage and insurance fees. You save the money there. So, I mean, it's better to put more down, more than 20%, but if you put more than 20% down, you don't qualify for this program. It's always been hard for young people to buy their first house. It's supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be a cakewalk. You have to work for it. Ask your parents or your grandparents about buying their first house and how hard it was for them. I once heard a story about a young couple who bought a house, a farm, in the 1940s, and they're actually still living in this farm. And it was such a struggle because they had to pay $8,000 for this 100-acre farm. And what a struggle it was to pay that much for this property back in the 40s. I remember when I was about 16 or 17 years old, going through the new home section, the newspaper. Remember, you used to go through the newspaper and look at the new home section in the paper, and houses hit $100,000. And I said to my mother, how am I ever supposed to afford a house when they're $100,000? And then she explained to me about mortgages and making monthly payments, and you don't have to pay the whole $100,000 right up front and that kind of stuff. If you're working at a minimum wage job, if you're working at McDonald's or Tim Hortons or some retail job for minimum wage, you're never going to be able to afford a house. Those jobs aren't made for people to buy houses on. If you want to buy a house, get out there, get some more education, get a better job, and start saving. So back then, 27 years ago, it was hard then too. House prices were definitely cheaper for sure, but the interest rates were higher. We didn't have 3% 5-year mortgages, or less than 3%. The interest rate I paid on my first mortgage was like 7%. Now don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with government programs to help first-time buyers get into their first house. I think they're great. I used one myself back in the early 90s. It was an Ontario provincial government program called an OHOSP, an Ontario Home Ownership Savings Plan. And it worked like an RSP. I would put money into the plan and I would get a tax deduction for it, but it had to be used for a down payment on the house. So when I bought my house, I went into the bank and did the paperwork, and they took the money out of my OHOSP and put it towards my down payment. So these government incentives, they're a good thing. Look at what happened in the United States in the mid-2000s. 2005, 2006, they were handing out loans to anybody who would buy a house. What do they call them? Ninja loans. No income, no job, no assets. No income, no job, no assets. Ninja. And then in 2007, 2008, the market fell out because people couldn't afford their houses. The interest rates went up a bit, and they couldn't afford their houses because they didn't have any money. They shouldn't have been buying a house in the first place. They didn't have any skin in the game, so they just walked away from their houses and the market crashed. It will always be tough for first-time buyers to get into their first house, and so it should be, in my opinion. You should have to work for these things.